Hello and welcome to Equity Merchants on Business Front TV, the show where we track the capital flows shaping Africa's tech, finance and energy landscapes. I'm Chimgozrim, reporting from Lagos, Nigeria. Here are the major headlines from across Africa. Ethiopia woos investors for its banking sector. Somalia eyes 2026 for stock exchange launch. NBS Bank shares soar on Malawi Stock Exchange. And PAPS launches blockchain currency exchange. We go to Ethiopia for our first story, where the country is courting foreign investors for its banking sector. The National Bank of Ethiopia this week issued a new licensing directive allowing foreign banks to establish branches, subsidiaries, or representative offices within the country. A minimum capital requirement of $37 million has been set for foreign entrants and follows the recent passage of Ethiopia's Banking Business Proclamation. While foreign investors can now enter Ethiopia's banking market, strict ownership limits apply. Foreigners, for example, can only hold up to 49% of shares, while natural persons are restricted to a 7% stake. In other news, the National Securities Exchange of Somalia has officially launched, marking a historic step towards fostering economic growth and integrating the country into both regional and global financial markets. The NSES, launched in Mogadishu, is a major development aimed at strengthening the country's financial sector and creating new investment opportunities. Trading on the exchange is expected to begin in early 2026 with a focus on key sectors like telecoms, banking, real estate, and energy. Yasin Ibar has been appointed as its first CEO, and he says this launch represents a milestone not only for Somalia's financial sector, but for the broader economy as well. According to Ibar, NSES will create opportunities for companies to raise capital and for investors to support Somalia's growth. Over in Malawi, NBS Bank is posting impressive gains in 2025 as its share price has skyrocketed, reaching 539 Malawian kwacha per share as of June 17th. This is up from just 344 Malawian kwacha at the start of the year and is a 209.9% increase, making it one of the country's top performers. In the last 2 weeks alone, NBS Bank stock has jumped by nearly 57%, continuing a strong upward trend driven by the bank's exceptional financial performance. CEO Temwani Simwaka attributes this success to the bank's enhanced digital services, improved credit management, and strategic investments in core banking systems. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, has launched a blockchain-based exchange in partnership with Interstellar. At least 80 companies tested the platform in a year-long trial. PAPS CEO Mike Obalu says multinational companies like airlines that struggle to access foreign exchange are the target audience as African nations try to break their dependence on the dollar. Access to finance continues to be a significant challenge for African businesses, hindering growth and innovation. While many businesses struggle to secure the necessary capital, what often goes unspoken is the importance of how you structure your business before you even approach potential investors. The right structure can not only make your company more attractive to investors, but can also unlock various types of funding options, from equity to debt and everything in between. Joining us to discuss this important topic is Mayowa Adeosun, Chief Financial Officer of Sycamore.
So can you give me like a rundown of how the fundraising journey for Sycamore has been? Everything, all the type of funding you guys have had, and what it looks like. Okay. You guys have raised up to $1.5 million so far or more? Please.
Well, it's roughly around that.
Okay.
Yes, it's roughly around that. So it's very interesting starts for us at Sycamore. We first raised amongst friends, family, and well-wishers, and that was an interesting thing because at the time it was myself, my co-founder Babatunde Ekemezie, and Onye Okunji. We were actually classmates in Lagos Business School, and some of our first investors were also our classmates. So they had seen what we were trying to do, and we had convinced them that we were the right people to do it at the time. So with personal funds and with some classmates who also wanted to participate, we were able to raise nothing too grand, but it was just a seed investment to get the ball rolling, and that's how we started.
Awesome, that's interesting. Now that was the first one.
That was the very first
one. Now that's like, it's pretty much common. We say the very first round for most startups is family and friends.
Family and friends, and
So,
fools if you're...
fools, right? That's quite interesting. So how do you structure your company for that? I'm not sure there's much due diligence that happens. Because my guy, Alpha, that kind of thing. So, but is there anything that we should know
So,
at that phase?
I mean, that's a very fantastic question. I think one of the most important things that you can do as someone who wants to start a company, and you're not going to be able to do the huge due diligence that's maybe the huge investor would expect. What you should be focused on is, first of all, developing yourself. That way you are the brand at that point in that time. So people have to look at you and see you as someone who has taken yourself seriously. You've invested in yourself, in your time, in your education, in your profession, and that you've also that you're committed to whatever it is that you're trying to do. So once you've positioned yourself in that kind of a way, people can now take you more seriously, and they believe that if they give you money, that you're actually going to do what you've said you're going to do.
So at this phase, it's not about the books, it's
not about the books, it's about you as the founder or the co-founder or as the business driver. You have to be the person for the job.
Interesting. Now, okay, talk to me about the next phase. You've won a grant.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that, and how did you structure for that?
Yeah, excellent. So we applied for several grants, and we faced a lot of rejections, a lot of disappointments. But of course, we have been successful with some later on. But one of the learnings we took away from that is, they talk about the cost of capital, right? The cost of capital, we typically think of it like in terms of debt, or if you take a loan, it's going to cost you X amount. But with grants, it still has a cost, right? Even though grant is free money, or people believe it to be free money, it still has a cost. And the cost might be, they want you to be specific around certain outputs that your business has to achieve. So it changes, or it might shift the direction or the strategy of your company if you're not careful, because you need to satisfy, there are some, strings attached with the money. So you need to be very careful. Now, grants are fantastic, and they allow you, if you're very strategic, they allow you to go from 0 to 1 in terms of proving the concepts that you wanted to do. And they don't have the financial implications, but they have an output in terms of the direction. They have that kind of implication. So you just have to make sure it fits for what you're trying to achieve, and that you are properly aligned with the grants.
Okay, so is there anything that needs to happen in terms of your accounting structure and things like that?
Yes.
Anything special?
Well, so grants, they also want to be sure that you are, depending on the level of business that you're at. I mean, some grants focus on startups that are very, very new, maybe seed level or even pre-seed level. And if you are a pre-seed or seed level business, then the grants, they're going to know that you're not going to have all these well elaborate, documents and recordings and files, but they just want to see that you're making the right steps, right? So you need to make sure that you have like a business account, make sure that you've separated your personal expenses from your business expenses, and that you're beginning to put things in order. And they will also help you. They will come in and help you to organize some of your records. So that's the value that they also bring to the table, that they can also help you to structure your business in a way that can enable you to even get more money down the road.
Okay, this is interesting. Now, we now leave the early guys to the serious guys, debt and equity.
Yeah.
And I guess, how do you now, at this phase, the requirements are a bit different, I'm
Very
sure.
different, very different.
Can you tell us what that looked like, and how did you now, how have you been able to, okay, let's start what that looks like first.
Okay.
Let me not.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, fantastic question, and I think this is very useful for anyone who is interested in going into business. So, the way that equity and debt are structured are quite different. So you have equity. These are people who want to give equity. They want to see that you have a dream, you have a vision, something that is a powerful, purposeful, and can be very futuristic, and they're willing to take a lot of risks with you. right? Especially if it's calculated risks. They understand that in business, you take risk, and that's why they're investing. But they want to believe that you understand the risk better than anybody else, and that you are a good bet to stake their investment on. So they are more risk, open. They're more, they have a higher tolerance for risk.
Yeah.
Now, debt, on the other hand, they don't have any tolerance for risk, right? They want to make sure that you have cash flow. Their priority is to be sure that the business is generating cash flow consistently. And there's a thing called DSCR, which is the debt service coverage ratio. It's jargon for banking and for debts. Basically what it means is that, does your business generate enough cash flow to be able to service the debts that they are giving you? So can you pay the interest? How many times can your cash flow pay the interest? And that's a metric that they use to determine whether they'll give you. They don't want to know about your vision. They don't want to know about the impacts that you're making. These are nice to know, but what they really care about is the cash flow. So I have a way of thinking about the three of them, which is the grant, equity, and debt. The grant is mostly for when you're trying to prove your concept. The equity is for when you're trying to build the concept that you've proven. So if you want to build, you need equity. You could take on the risk, and the equity will allow you to take that risk. And the debt is when you want to scale the business, right? If you want to scale, then you take debts. But your concept must be proven, and you must have built the infrastructure you need to scale by that point. So debt is something that you use to scale. It's not something you use to take risks and to prove your concepts.
Or to say, let's test to see.
And no, you don't test with debts. And the banks will not allow you to test with debts as well. That's another thing. They're not set up that way. So you need to understand the dynamics of the fund that you're dealing with, and that will help you to attract more investment down the road.
This is interesting. Now, what I find interesting is you've been able to structure the company to be able to get funds from any of the sources, and they have distinctly different requirements. So was that something you guys thought of from day one and say, hey, we want to set up everything to be able to be flexible, or was it something that came and as you guys grew, you guys were more mature? And what does that
mean? So for Sycamore, we're uniquely positioned because of the nature of the business that we run. The nature of the business that we run is a credit business. So when we take on debts, our debts would be the debt that we are taking from necessarily like individuals, HNIs, and institutions. And the debt is used to, for our operations, right? So we take on debt and we give out debts. So it's the cost of our funds, right? The source of funds is debt, and the use of funds is our loans. So for our case, we knew debt was going to be a very big part of our funding, right? But when we wanted to scale, when we wanted to hire talent, when we wanted to ramp up operations, we now knew that we needed equity, right? So equity was used for bringing on talent, was used for infrastructure, for research and development, and for those type of purposes, then we know we need equity. But from the beginning, we already knew that debt was going to be a large part of the business, and so knowing that we were able to structure our business in a way that we could receive it and we knew exactly what to do with it as soon as we had it.
That's quite interesting. Now, I would like, so all of these things, do you have the benefit of hindsight on some of them, or were you guys already futuristic and like, well, I can see this already?
I wish we could say that we saw everything from the beginning, but that would not be the honest truth. I think you, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, you can make educated guesses on what the future will be. But you have to remain dynamic, you have to remain flexible, and you have to remain willing to learn as you go along. So we did a lot of learnings. I mean, what I'm telling you now is not something I could have known in six years ago. It's been learnt as we've grown and as we've developed. So yes, it's definitely with a bit of hindsight as well.
Okay, so how have you been able to balance this as a business? like balance the three? So you have expectations from investors who want to see you guys scale massively. You have expectations from the guys, the debt financiers, who want to see you guys be disciplined and make it something. You have donors who want to see impact, as it were.
Exactly.
So how do you balance expectations with this?
Fantastic question. I think you have to realize, again, that when you're putting together like presentations, you're putting together a dashboard, you need to know the audience, right? It's not one dashboard for all three. You need to have a dashboard that speaks to your equity investor. They want to see growth. They want to see, customer acquisition. They want to see all these things that speak to the equity and the upside of the business. The debt side, they want to see cash flow. They want to see how are you managing your expenses. Are you investing too heavily into long-term projects? So they want to see that the money is going out and coming in within a short cycle. And then your grants financiers, they want to see impact, right? They want to see how many people's lives have you impacted. What's the ratio of men to women in your organization or in your customer base. So you need to know who your audience are and cater your dashboard to speak to them specifically. While all these things can be true at the same time, you just need to know who needs what information and when.
So now with the global capital landscape, what it is right now, a lot of African startups are no longer raising as much as they used to. And I think this is a higher interest rates environment. So far, so good. The era of ZEP as I don't know if it's going to come back, but how are you thinking about the future fundraisers you guys will be making, and how are you going to go about it?
Yeah, excellent. So I think the environment that we're in is very peculiar. It's very unique, but I think it sharpens a lot of the best entrepreneurs and businesses because it allows one to have to navigate through a lot of these challenges. And if you are able to make it through, then you really do have a fantastic business that can weather pretty much anything. And I think in this environment, term sheets are not as important as trust, right? In terms of from an investor standpoint, you can have an ironclad term sheet, but really what they're looking for and what's the currency in this part of the world is trust. So you have to build that trust, over time. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Doesn't mean you have to get everything right. But your investors and the capital that wants to invest in you needs to know that you're going to do everything possible in your power to get it done. Whether it's network, whether it's go out to speak to your customer, whatever it is that is necessary, that you're going to do it, and that you're the person or that you're the team to do it. So that's how you can navigate in this climate, because interest rates are not coming down, and equity is becoming a lot more scarce. Right, it's gone are the days of equity was just a wash. Everyone was just raising, and I think it's in a way it's actually good because funding is not necessarily a trophy. It's a tool, right? Being able to raise millions of dollars, it shouldn't necessarily in itself just be a reward. It's a tool that you need to use, that you need to capitalize in your business, and if you get the wrong type of funding in your business, it can actually be very, detrimental to the success. So determining what type of funding you're getting, how you use it, is more important than just saying that you're able to raise.
That's cool. So if you're talking to someone in corporate finance or CFO out there and you want to tell them, hey, if you're doing any of these things, these are the mistakes you should avoid. These are the most important metric you should pay attention to. What would those be?
Well, I would advise any professional, any CFO or someone within the corporate finance field to go back to remembering, how what they say is cash is king, right? And cash in any business, whether you're in the credit lending business or you're in the manufacturing business or you're in the FMCG, whatever business that you're in, cash remains one of the most important aspects of a business, because you can have a fantastic product, you can be making millions in terms of revenue, but if you're not careful about your cash and the cash cycle, you can run into very big problems very quickly, and that's something that you must continuously put your focus on and make sure that you're planning in advance, and then also you're preparing your company for future investment, right? So future investors want to see what the future looks like, and so your books and your records already accounting for that. Maybe you're doing a scenario analysis, giving the best case, the moderate case, the worst case, and this also speaks to how your cash can be managed in these cases as well.
Awesome. So do you have any final words and anything you want to leave the broader audience with?
Final words. I think this again is a great opportunity in this environment, even though we have a lot of challenges. Interest rates is high, equity is scarce, but I think this is what will allow a lot of the new ideas to come to the forefront. These are the ideas that are really going to make an impact, ideas that are really going to be scalable, because for you to navigate through all of these challenges and obstacles, you really do have to have something unique and something profound. And I just look forward to seeing what will come out of this environment in the next few years, especially with the introduction of like AI and technologies is really bringing out some brilliant ideas. And with Nigerians in general, brilliant, innovative, hardworking people, and I'm so excited to see what we will do.
Awesome. Speaking of ideas, I just realized something. At a certain type of businesses, they should be considering certain types of funding. Maybe we could say Sycamore was lucky because they're in the credit lending space, so they're able to blend everything.
Yeah.
Or there's certain type of businesses that should not even consider debt at all, or equity, or grants.
I think mostly every business will have a point in time where they have one of the three, grants, equity, or debt. But if you're very lucky, you will be able to tap into grants early, right? Getting grants early is a lifesaver. Even though, yes, the people that are given the grants are focused on the impact, but if the impact aligns with what you actually want to do as well, and you have a plan to deliver on that impact, then fantastic. Grants is what you should be looking for as an early, startup or business. Once you've been able to go past that early stage and you really want to scale, you've proven the concept, then equity. But for a business outside of the lending space or outside of the financial, industry, debts can be a bit risky, especially in this part of the world where it might be a bit pricey. But I will also say, lastly, the equity aspects now. One of the challenges is that before the Naira devaluation and the currency fluctuation, people were able to raise in dollar, and because of their operations are in Naira, it wouldn't be too risky to take dollar investments and Naira operations. But now, because of the way dollar is so priced, I would also advise entrepreneurs and businesses to look towards getting local investment in Naira. So that way you don't put as much pressure on your business to return the funds as an equity investment later on down the road.
Okay. So yeah, yes, I think you've made it clear that businesses should be able to take out the time, like to know when to go for debts, grants, and equity. So are there specific metric you should be looking out for, and to know if, let's say I'm over leveraging this aspect, and I need to go for a different type of funding or things like that. Are there specific metric that will let you know that, okay, I've gotten past this stage, I need to move to the next stage, or I need to do the other thing?
Okay, excellent. I think for debt and equity, it's quite easy to determine which one would be more beneficial. For equity now, if you are trying to scale very rapidly and you don't necessarily have you're not necessarily profitable, but you have an idea that is catching fire and you need to put in a lot of capital into the business to bring on more customer, then equity would be the way forward. But if you are already profitable and you're generating cash flow, and you just want to scale your business that way, then debt would be most likely the best way, because you can use that as a leverage to, plug into your business, expand your operations, and you already have a business model that is generating cash flow and it's profitable. So you can pay back your interest, you can pay back your principal, and what's left is for you as the business owner. So those two are the very clear. Now, grants can come in at any time. At any point in time, you can get a grant. For example, now Sycamore, we just recently got some sort of grant investments recently, and we're already a 6-year-old business. So we can still get grants even as we turn 7, 8, 9, 10. Grants will always be available. But for equity and debts, it really depends on the stage of the business that you're in and what is most suitable for you. I think that's that.
A new directive from Nigeria's Securities and Exchange Commission is causing waves in the capital markets as the SEC imposes tenure limits on directors of major market operators. Under the new rule, directors of capital market operators designated as significant public interest entities can serve a maximum of 10 consecutive years in the same company and 12 years across the same group structure. The SEC has also introduced a 3-year cool-off period for CEOs and executive directors who have reached the end of their tenure before they can be appointed as chairman, with their chairman roles capped at 4 years. The rule already has many capital market operators rattled, and we are joined by Mary Ekemezie, a corporate commercial lawyer, to discuss what this means for the country's capital markets and how players should prepare. I think first we will begin with just looking at what role non-independent executive directors play in a company.
Okay, so independent non-executive directors, that's a mouthful, so I'm going to call them INEDs for the purpose of this conversation. Play a very critical role, right? They are, before I even start with their role, let's look at their qualifications under the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, right? For you to be an INED, you can't have any material relationship with the company. If you were a consultant of some sort, auditor, lawyer, whatever, there must have been at least a 3-year cooling period. You can't be a relative or a board member. If you own any shares, like 0.0001%. So already that shows us that we're looking for someone who has no relationship to this company and who's coming in unattached, is neutral, And so we're looking for someone who's neutral. Of course, the person must have all the other qualifications the director should have. They have to understand those roles. Someone who's able to bring independence of thought and objectivity to the board, and who's impartial. I don't really know anybody. I'm just coming to serve. So now that we have an idea of who can be an independent director, it gives us a sense about why they're important to the board. Because they're able to look at because they're not so close to the problem, and they're coming in afresh with a fresh pair of eyes. They're bringing independence of thought. They're bringing fresh perspectives that we may not have considered. They're able, because they have less background influences affecting them, they're more able to act in the best interest of the company. Doesn't mean all the other directors are not acting, but all the other directors, the executives, right, they play 2 roles. They're both employees and directors. It's not the same. So the INEDs bring neutrality, ensure that the integrity of the board is preserved. They ensure that they are there to sort of push forward or help the other members of the board, just sort of keep an eye on the role on, is this really in the best interest of the company? Are we doing this for the shareholders' interests? Are we considering everybody, shareholders, employees, the environment in which we operate, or are we just doing this for specific interests? And then because, certain committees, right, nomination, audit, remuneration, we need an INED, because then the audit sort of looks at what's going on with the finances of the company. They're able to sort of catch what others may not see, because they're also thinking about, for them, liability because they're directors, but also, look, I'm here to sort of provide objective perspectives. What are others not saying? Because they're too close to this. Remuneration, it's an ongoing concern in almost any industry you can think about today. The gaps between executive compensation packages and other members of a team. And then sometimes it does look as if, the executive members are just stuffing their pockets. So having an INED head that committee and sort of decide this is what the bandwidth does is also they're thinking, what should be? What should they earn? What shouldn't they earn? Now imagine that an INED who knows that the practice in this firm or this company is that I'm going to transmute eventually to an ED position. How objective and neutral are they going to be? There's a conflict of interest just down there in determining what the remuneration package is. So are we sure that when they were deciding this, it was in the best interest of the company, or were they thinking about, oh, down the line, I will get into this role, right? So that's the concern. Nomination, they sort of have a sense in who gets onto the board, what the criteria for getting people on the board are. If they were thinking about, I'm going to transmute, were they also thinking about, oh, potentially who can I recommend? So it's also to prevent conflict of interest. That's why this is what I think is driving this change, to prevent and to preserve the integrity of the governance of the board.
Okay, so how does this track with what we see in other jurisdictions? Is it like global practice for regulators to try to limit how frequently this happens?
Yes, it's everywhere. It is. I mean, every other place there is one term limits. That's the, and then two, there are checks and balances. Okay. And so usually, what is it called? Every jurisdiction sees the same problem that we have. To be honest, in Nigeria, it's not new. I should mention that CBN in 2023 already did this, had the same rule. So this is not new in the Nigerian space. But even other jurisdictions have this. Now, what other jurisdictions sometimes do is if you do want to do that transmutation, then there has got to be a disclosure and a compelling reason. So if you're saying, look, we can't find a replacement right now for an ED. This is what it is. There's a disclosure, there's risk management, there's stakeholder engagement to understand why, and before. So there's a justification for that. But that's very rare. That's not something that happens. But the same sort of concerns around transmutation, happens in other jurisdictions, because the end goal is to preserve the integrity of the board, ensure objectivity, and ensure that the independent director is still at all times impartial. And also we want sort of, fresh blood, on the, if it's the same person. So I was an INED role, right? I do my 3 terms. So you can't do more than 3 terms. Okay. I do my 3 terms, 3 years of 3, total 9 years, right? I do my 3 terms. And then I transmute to non-executive. Yeah. Let's even say I transmute non-executive, right? Then I do maybe another 2 years, 9 and 2. 11. That's 8 years. That's 2 terms, right? Yeah, okay, that's 8 years. That's about 17. Or maybe I even do just one 4-year term as a non-executive. So that's 9 plus 4, 11. And then I become the MD. And I do another 1 year or 2 years. It defeats the purpose. It could be seen as a backhand way of grooming successorship. And trying to sort of, so as if from day one we already knew whether this person. So on the face of it, they're independent, but we know the end game is that we're grooming them. So if we're grooming someone, how much of an independence was there,
Yeah. Okay. So, like you just pointed out, there's also a cool-off period for CEOs transitioning to become chairman of the board. Why do you think the SEC wouldn't want? And the cool-off period is 3 years. But why do you think the SEC wouldn't want CEOs just immediately transitioning to becoming a chairman of the board?
I think that one reason I would say is, to help them also reframe their role as some sort of psychological, but one, a physical absence, but also a psychological reframing. The CEO of a board who's been there for a while, and let's assume the CEO served for 2 terms of 4 years each, right? That's 8 years. They could serve up to, I think, 3 terms, which is 12. But let's say they served for 8 years. In 8 years, they've built strong loyalty. They are CEO is the powerhouse of the company, and so there's loyalty, there's deference. Also, culturally speaking, we defer a lot to power. We're not known to challenge power easily in this culture. Our culture doesn't really like it, and so this same person who was CEO for 8 years then becomes right about immediately chairman. Remember, he's CEO, so he led the management team. At chairman, he's now chairman of the board. Even if there's a new CEO, there will be a power tussle because he's just literally moved from CEO to chairman. There's a bit of, this is how we used to do it. You have to keep doing it that way. There's also the fact that, depending on who replaces his role, the person may just keep being under his shadows, right? So it's allowed the new executive also. You're gone. You need to go. Okay. Let's allow the new executive run their show. Let's let them bring in their own perspectives to how the business should, be run. Again, to preserve the integrity of the governance of the board. There's always going to be, for someone who's been in the system for a long time, undue influence. It may not necessarily be overt, but it's there. So there's a conflict of interest right there. Because, for 8 years you were managing the company. So you know exactly how it works, what's going on.
Do you think the 3-year period is, because I'm thinking about it, like, is this even enough time for your influence to wane, especially for, we have sort of celebrity CEOs who are respected and feared, and then our cultural context as well. Just that combination, do you think 3 years is enough? Well, or should we even be considering, like, outrightly banning a CEO from becoming chairman?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question from 2 perspectives, right? I think that also what's happening with the cool-off period is that we're also looking at what's happening in other climes. And other climes is generally around 2 to 3 years. So I think that there's a bit of that. The idea also is that in 2 to 3 years, a lot can change. A lot can change in the sense that, there might be a shake-up. People may have left, particularly people who are maybe loyal and thinking, I can't work with other people, I'm going somewhere else. Or others may have decided, I've been here long enough to change. There might also be changes in the macro environment in which the business is operating that sort of changes things quite a bit. Could we increase it? I think yes, given our own particular reality, cultural nuances. But 3 years seems to be the very minimum that, across the world seems to work. I think is also why we're also trying to align what we're doing with international best practices. So 3 years seems to be a good way to go. I think that increasing it is not a bad idea, but it's not a bad way, not a bad place to be at. Can there be an outright ban? I don't know. And I don't know because I don't know that it is fair to completely close the doors, particularly for CEOs who are part owners of a company. Yeah, I don't think that it's fair to just completely shut the doors on them because they have put in not just time but also money into that business. They should have some way of sort of keeping an eye on what's going on where my money is actually, it's a bit honest. But of course, they're not going to be there, forever. After a while, they're going to have to exit if we keep following the tenure system. So I'm not sure an outright ban is the way to go. Maybe a longer cooling off period might be the way to go, but an outright ban, unless there's something particularly egregious about this particular individual, in which case it is then, you just can't be a director anyways. And so it is not a ban specific to CEOs, transmuting to chairman, it is a specific ban on a particular individual.
Okay. So looking at this, there has been some uncertainty around who this applies to. Some people have expressed doubt that they are not sure if it applies to their businesses or whether, and even when it takes effect. I mean, the SEC says this takes effect immediately, but some people have expressed like doubts around that. I'm just wondering, right, for people who perhaps their companies are still very early, very young, and they don't have to be too bothered about how this affects them. How can they prepare for a regulation like this? Because this is something that's probably going to be around for a while before the SEC maybe changes their mind on it. So how can businesses prepare?
I think that it's okay. I think that a bit of cultural change has to happen. And I would say like an openness to change.
Okay.
And I would say an openness to the discomfort that change brings. Because every change just sort of destabilizes you for a bit, regardless of how beautiful that change is. There's a bit of discomfort in trying to get used to it. We're not particularly, again, culturally speaking, a people that are in love with change that much. We're like, we're very big on if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And there is merit to if it isn't broken, don't fix it. There is merit to it. But given the very importance that INEDs play on the board, it is, and given the challenges we're having, the CEO transmutes right immediately to the chairman, it's important that companies sort of do a bit of look. I know we've always done this in the past, but where is the SEC coming from? Just sort of for a minute, work in the SEC's shoes, remembering that they are protecting, they want your company to continue to survive, but you have a public company, you have millions of shareholders. They're also protecting not just the high net individuals who are your shareholders, but also those really small minorities interest holders. And so if this change will ensure that we have more effective governance on the board, which usually translates into more profitable company, shouldn't we be imbibing it? So early on, just understand this is not a witch hunt process. This is really in the long run for the betterment of the company, and then be open to the change and discomfort, and then start planning around it. Where can we get INEDs? And then how are we also grooming our own internal succession plan for both management and the board? I think with an openness to change and a willingness to sort of see where the regulator is coming from this, and also just sort of see overall how this will improve governance in the company, companies will be fine. There'll be a little bit of disorientation. Change is always hard, but just getting comfortable with that discomfort and thinking, oh well, how can we make the most out of this? Just being optimistic about this is what we need to do. Let's plan for it. And if you're just coming in, you're a new company that is just trying, a new player in the capital market or capital market space, or just a very new public company that's floated, starting with this from today isn't going to be that hard because you're just going to start. So I think that it's a good thing for the market.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. So prepare for change, like sort of get used to
the
discomfort of change. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your thoughts with us. That's all we have for you on this edition of Equity Merchants. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Business Front TV for full episodes and catch our clip highlights on LinkedIn and X. I'm Chimgozrim. See you next week.